How do everybody? So I am making a quick video now. I will pre-warn everybody, this is going to be very upsetting stuff. I'll be sharing a short video which is from 2014, which will sort of lay down the groundwork for where this article is going to be written. This is a report from 2013. It is the final summaries of the court about a very, very shocking crime that was exposed pretty much for the first time in British history. This was about grooming gangs and how far these gangs went. Absolutely shocking stuff. I will absolutely not be editing a single word of the court transcript. It is publicly available information and therefore being deemed reasonable for the public to consume this information. I will warn you now that it is incredibly upsetting stuff, although, and if you are easily upset, do not go any further than this, I'm afraid. As I say, normally I mind my words, try and be as delicate as I can with the language, but I'm going to be reading the transcript verbatim. I will also be screen recording it, so the words will be on the page as well as I'm going through it. Therefore, you will be able to read the transcript for yourself. I'll put a link below so you can download the document yourself, just if you want to read it yourself or share it with other people for whatever reasons you may want to do as a study aid. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But basically, before this, people like myself who used to speak about these things were labelled racist, bigots. We were called conspiracy theorists. And this was really the turning point of the reality of Labour's importation of massive amounts of people from the third world, basically. And I am using a quote here, to rub the right nose in diversity. I believe that was Tony Blair's scriptwriter who said that. His name escapes me. But this is the absolute fallout and consequence of those actions, and this document has just become available to the public. So I will start reading that out in a minute. As I say, I'll share a video first, which is showing the police ineptitude and the police actively covering up these crimes, and the chief of police trying to answer the questions being presented to him. Rather shockingly, I might add. And I also want to add, nobody has been arrested for covering these up. Nobody's been disciplined for covering these up. Nobody's lost a job for covering these up. Nobody's had to pay a fine or anything. There has been zero consequences to anybody who has engaged in the cover-up of these very, very serious crimes. I'll move on to it now, and I mean, I would say enjoy the video, but buckle up, you're in for a ride.
An 11-year-old girl came to the attention of the police after she disclosed that she and another child had been sexually abused by a group of adult males. Just a few weeks later, she was found in a derelict house with another child and a number of adult males. Yet she was arrested, 11 years of age, she was arrested for being drunk and disorderly, and none of the males were arrested. Has your force identified the police officers involved in that and found out what went on?
I don't know.
Okay.
Don't know.
Police officer dismissed the case of a 12-year-old girl who'd been having sex with up to 5 Asian males because he said she had been, quote, 100% consensual in every incident. 12 years of age? I think that's unbelievable, to be honest. Have you identified who that officer was and found out what happened there?
Can I just make one thing clear? That I've said today that we must have an independent investigation team to come back at this. I have also personally spoken to the Director of Investigations at the IPCC.
Sorry, Mr. Austin, could the Chief Constable just finish? Please finish.
I've also personally spoken to the Director of Investigations at the IPCC, and in order to involve them in this as well.
Fathers had tracked down their daughters and tried to remove them from houses where they were being abused, only to find themselves arrested when police were called to the scene. Do you know what happened in that case?
Chair, I don't seek to defend any of this, and that I've asked for I'm in the process of setting up an independent investigation because the number of staff at Rotherham over such a period of time means that it can't have credibility unless we have some independence to the investigative process. One
of your officers decided that a 12-year-old girl was having sex with up to 5 adults and was 100% consenting in every incident. Should somebody like that be working for the police? So, I mean, no. Somebody's capable of making a decision like that?
No, it's a dreadful decision. No. And I've set my position out to find out about it.
Judiciary of England and Wales, RV Akhtar Dogar, Anjum Dogar, Kamir Jamil, Mohammed Carrara, Bassam Carrara. Central Criminal Court, 27th of June 2013. Sentencing remarks of His Honour Judge Peter Rook, QC. You have been found guilty by a jury of a series of sexual crimes of the utmost gravity. The offences involved the exploitation and abuse of young, highly vulnerable girls in the Oxford area over a long period. There are many aggravating features. On occasions, the depravity was extreme. You targeted the young girls because they were vulnerable, underage and out of control. They tended to have troubled upbringings and unsettled home lives. You subjected them to repeated abuse. This was a pattern of which repeated itself over and over again. With the exception of CD, the offences took place over long periods. Quick note, for those of you who may be wondering, abbreviations and code terms are used for the victims due to their age and the sensitivity of the crimes. So when you see things like CD or V or things like that, it is generally referring to the victims and their identities being protected. Each victim was groomed, in brackets, coerced and intimidated to facilitate the commission of the offences and to make the likelihood of them ever reporting them remote. This involved planning. You would build up their trust, providing them with drinks, drugs and attention which they craved. The effort was that some complainants became addicted to drugs, whilst others had an existing habit hardened. You would develop power over the children which would drive a wedge between them and their parents. If a girl showed reluctance, you would enforce compliance with threats and brutality. In some cases, it may not have been in day-to-day control, but you were in a position to enforce your power over them when you wanted to do so. Each of the first 4 complainants felt both fear and misguided loyalty to you. They were reluctant to tell the authorities what you were doing to them. Police and social services missed telltale signs. Their sexualised behaviour was misunderstood. No doubt you committed these terrible crimes in the belief that these girls would never be believed. No doubt this encouraged you to carry on your depraved conduct. We have heard all about a subculture in the Cowley Road where there was little moral compass and little or no effort to control. The defence was gone so far as to suggest there was a willful blindness by the authorities. Whether that be right or not, it does not in any way justify your actions. Asad Hussein and Zeshan Ahmed, you have both been found guilty of 2 serious offences under S9 of the Sexual Offences Act 2003. Again, your victims were underage, vulnerable girls who have been given drink and drugs to make them more malleable, as you well knew. I shall sentence you both after sentencing the other 5. The complainants, each of these 6 young girls, have showed enormous courage in coming to the Old Bailey to give evidence. Point 1. Knowing they would be accused of lying. Point 2. Knowing they would have to relive their ordeals. Point 3. Knowing they have not been believed by the authorities in the past. 9. The jury has found that they came to this court to tell the truth. It is to be hoped that their courage in coming forward to give evidence has not only exposed their activities but will send a message to and act as a deterrent to others who are tempted to act in this way. Furthermore, it is to be hoped that lessons will be learnt and the appropriate authorities will not fail in the future to take appropriate action in the face of evidence of such activities. I would just like to make a point there. That's a red flag phrase to me. Lessons will be learnt. When people are saying lessons will be learnt, that usually means that nothing will change, and the judge may very well be aware of that. Although I can't obviously put words into the judge's mouth, only that individual can express that. But I do find that phrase very, very concerning whenever I hear it. Lessons will be learnt, guys. Always look out for that one. In my sentencing remarks, I propose to give each of the victims anonymity initials reflecting the order of the counts of the indictment. Oh, well, there we go. It's explained it. AB1, CD2, EF3, GH4, IJ5, KL6. I am grateful for very full pre-sentence reports upon each defendant. The respective authors have put in a great deal of work to assist me in this sentencing exercise. When dealing with the facts of this case, they did not have the benefit of hearing the evidence. I will sentence only upon the basis of matters borne out by the evidence. I must have regard to the sexual offences definitive guidelines. I accept, as do all counsel, in respect of the first 3 defendants, and the 5th and 6th defendant, that these cases fall outside the cases envisioned in the guidelines, in the sense that a combination of offences take them above the highest categories in the guidelines. To that extent, I will depart from the guidelines. However, I will take into account, where present, the aggravating and mitigating factors identified in the guideline. I will seek to pass sentences which are proportionate to the recommendations in the guideline, and I will apply the totality principle in all cases. This judge means business, basically, is what that says. I wish to begin by considering the impact of your actions upon your victims and your families, as there can be no doubt that you have blighted their lives and robbed them of their adolescence. There can be no doubt that your activities have caused them immense psychological harm. In some instances, you have put their parents through many days of torment and distress. I would probably say many years in some cases. AB. At various stages, she was the victim of the activities of 3 of you. Akhtar Dogar, Anjum Dogar, Kamar Jamil. I have read victim statements from AB's parents and a victim's personal statement from AB herself. AB writes that since the abuse began, she has suffered ongoing emotional and psychological issues. She has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and suffers from bouts of anxiety and depression as a result of this. She suffers from self-loathing. She has difficulties in relationships. She has completely lost self-confidence. She missed out on much of her education from the start of secondary school, when she had shown so much early potential. It is a great credit to her that, notwithstanding these setbacks, she has 6 to 7 years afterwards managed to have successful jobs. Her parents' statements and their evidence during the trial have revealed the devastating effect your actions have had on the family. How the parents looked on as their bright, intelligent, loving, open little girl turned into a sullen, secretive, evasive and frightened girl who lost all ambition for the future. Inevitably, they have feelings of anger and guilt. As a result of your actions, their daughter has been changed forever. You put not just AB but her family through years of sheer torture, depriving AB of her teenager years. Instead of enjoying a proper family life, they went through years of distress, upset, anger, fear and helplessness. Her parents were made to feel powerless whilst their child had become entangled in something truly evil. They recognised that it was your actions that caused this. However, it is hardly surprising that they feel that these emotions were compounded by failure within the social care system, the criminal justice system and the police service. As a family, they felt isolated, even from their own extended family. EF. At various stages, she was the victim of activities of 4 of you: Akhtar Dogar, Anjum Dogar, Mohammed Karar and Bassam Karar. I have read a victim's personal statement from EF's mother. She says that she does not think her daughter will ever get over it. She lost half her childhood and almost all of her secondary education as a result of the abuse she suffered. She has totally changed. She is now ultra fearful and cautious and is unable to enjoy the sorts of activities a young person of her age should be able to. She suffers from nightmares, panic attacks and flashbacks and is being treated for depression. Despite being the victim, she carries with her a great burden of shame and embarrassment about what happened. Her courage in giving evidence in this case and having to relive experiences made her so anxious that she had to give up on her college course. Her mother was working hard to establish a real bond and win her trust. She did not know she would be struggling against the influences of a gang who used every tactic to turn her against her mother, and the extent that EF would be seriously violent towards her if she tried to stand between her and them. Inevitably, your actions took its toll upon her mother. Hunting the streets for her night after night and driving all over southern England to pick her up when she surfaced from the latest trafficking episode took its toll upon her mother emotionally and physically. Threats meant that her mother had to sell their home and flee from Oxford. Akhtar Dogar, Anjum Dogar, Kamar Jamil, Akhtar Dogar and Anjum Dogar. Your depraved conduct involved the brutal sexual exploitation of 3 vulnerable girls. On occasions, you, Akhtar Dogar and Anjum Dogar, acted with great brutality. Kamar Jamil, you were involved in the exploitation of 2 of those girls. AB. You, Akhtar Dogar, have been convicted of 6 counts against AB, 1 of vaginal rape, 2 of oral rape, 1 of anal rape, 1 for conspiracy to rape, 1 for arranging child prostitution. You, Anjum Dogar, you have been convicted of 4 counts against AB. 1 count of oral, 1 of vaginal rape, 1 of conspiracy to rape, and 1 of arranging child prostitution. You, Kamar Jamil, have been convicted of 3 counts against AB, 1 of vaginal rape, 2 for oral rape, 1 of conspiracy to rape, and 1 of arranging child prostitution. You robbed AB of her early teenage years. You started to abuse her from the time she was 13. It is true that she was already absconding and had taken drugs. You took it to a different level. You targeted her. She was highly vulnerable and easy prey for you. You groomed her with drink, drugs, trinkets, and attention. You well knew her age. You made her feel that she had to comply with your wishes. To enforce your demands, you told her that you'd come and burn her house down and burn her little brother. She believed you, and it was always in the back of her mind. Quite apart from using her own sexual self-gratification, you coerced her into providing sex to vast numbers of strangers. Up to 4 or 5 men would be invited to addresses so they could have sex with her. Men were brought from Bradford, Leeds, Slough and London. Sometimes the sex would be photographed, no doubt to lure more customers. Men would say they had come a long way to see her. AB described you and the men who would come as having a pack mentality. You were oblivious as to what was happening to her. She became emotionally and physically exhausted. Threats were made to kill her. Your only concerns were your own self-gratification and the satisfaction of your customers, so you could achieve commercial gain from arranging for others to abuse her. If she resisted, she would be coerced. Customers would become angry. For instance, if oral sex was required, her head would be pushed down, her hair pulled, and she would be slapped. Strangers would burn her with cigarettes. A stranger almost throttled her. 1 deliberately scratched her vagina with his nails. 1 inserted a hairbrush into her vagina. 1 of the rapes, of which you have all 3 been convicted, relates to the terrifying ordeal of which you subjected AV at Shotover Woods, count 10. This episode provides a graphic example of how you would react if she failed to comply. AB pretended she had a period to avoid sex. You, Akhtar, reacted by putting your hand down her trousers so as to check whether this was true. You, Akhtar, Anjum and Kamir Jamil then embarked upon a wicked plan to punish her for lying. At night, you took her to a remote car park up a hill near Shotover Woods. It was pitch black. You ignored her pleading. You made her get down on her knees and forced her to give you oral sex. You subjected her to verbal abuse, telling her that she knew what they do to pigs, and they were going to cut her throat if she did not comply. I'm just going to make a small point here. The fact that they refer to her as a pig is a very racially and religiously motivated statement, and I've said this in previous points before in videos. This is what annoys me about these cases, that these individuals are never charged for racially aggravated assaults or religiously aggravated assaults either. This is very, very clearly racially motivated by the fact that they are referring to her as a pig. And unfortunately, the court seems to be very, very reluctant to address the racial aspects of these, and I do think that is an underlying problem in our entire legal system, is the unwillingness of these people to actually highlight the fact that these are racially and religiously motivated. So anyway, I'll carry on. It is a clear inference that you have invited others to join you. Another car arrived within 10 to 15 minutes. There were 4 men in that car. She was made to give oral sex to all 4. She said they were all encouraging each other. You then abandoned her. Ironically, so pitiful was the state in which you left her, she had to contact you as she felt there was no one else she could turn to in the circumstances. Your conduct continued until she was 15 over a period of about 2 years, with breaks when she was placed out of the county in the care system. Her mother described how by that time there was not much left of her apart from aggression. You took her soul. She felt as though it had been ripped out. She hated herself at that time. You put her parents through years of sheer torture. CD Akhtar Dogar, Anjum Dogar, Kamar Jamil. You have all been convicted of 1 count of conspiracy to rape, count 12, which relates to providing CD for penetrative sex with others. You, Akhtar Dogar and Anjum Dogar, have each been convicted of separate counts involving oral rapes by each of you upon CD, count 12. You, Kamar Jamil, apart from the conspiracy to rape and 2 counts of rape relating to the same period when you with others took CD by car to near a lake, counts 11A and 11B. CD was a very shy young girl, looked her young age. She was emotionally very immature. She was extremely vulnerable. She was introduced to you by AB and you immediately exploited her. All three of you would take CD to various places. Sometimes you would invite other men to come and have sex with her. You would get drunk before the men had sex with her. True, the offending was shorter than in other cases and lasted less than 7 weeks over the late summer of 2006. Nevertheless, I regard this sexual exploitation as very grave. You, Akhtar, on one occasion forced her to have sex with you, count 14. You, Anjum, pressurised her into giving you oral sex, pulling her head down, count 15. You, Akhtar, changed from presenting as nice to becoming threatening, grabbing, pulling her and threatening her with a gun. You, Anjum, also changed from presenting as nice to becoming threatening, saying you had a gun. You, Kamar Jamil, with another man, took CD in a car to a quiet place near a lake where you raped her first orally and then vaginally. You grabbed her ponytail and forced her head onto your penis. You then raped her vaginally. She felt she had no choice with two men in a car in a remote place. You fully participated in these offences. However, I accept from what CD said about you, your offences against her were not accompanied by the same brutality as in the cases of your co-defendants. EF. Akhtar Dogar, Anjum Dogar, you've been convicted of 1 count of conspiracy to rape, 1 of trafficking, and 1 of arranging child prostitution. Count 16, 18, 19. Akhtar Dogar, on 3 occasions you both took EF to the Nanford guest house to provide sex to men who were strangers to her. You both groomed her for the task by plying her with drugs. No doubt these strangers were your customers who were paying for you providing EF. Anjum Dogar, you were acting with your brother on 2 occasions. On a 4th occasion, acting together, you both rang EF at night, summoning her into your car where you forced her to give oral sex to one of your customers by pulling her head down onto his penis. You, Anjum Dogar, subjected her to degrading and humiliating verbal abuse at the same time. Akhtar Dogar, you are now aged 29. I accept that you have no previous convictions for sexual offences. I have read references from those who speak well of you. Anjum Dogar, you are now aged 31. Again, I accept that you have no previous convictions for sexual offences. First, I have to consider on the information before me whether each of you are dangerous. In particular, I have to decide whether there is a case significant risk to members of the public of serious harm by the commission of your further specific offences. S.225 brackets 1 brackets B CJA 2003. I have considered cumulatively, point 1, the young age of your 3 victims and their vulnerability. Point 2, the manner in which they were targeted, groomed and abused. Point 3, the number of strangers who you arranged to come and have sex with them and the depraved sex that occurred on occasions. Point 4, the repeated abuse and the length of time during which it occurred, particularly in the cases of AB. Point 5, the serious psychological harm of your actions have caused. I have read pre-sentence reports. The authors of the clear view that you do represent such a risk. I have made an allowance for the fact that the authors have not heard the evidence. However, I have no doubt, given this catalogue of offending over a protracted period, as well as evidence of your continued preoccupation with young girls after the time of these offences, that you do represent such a risk, and that risk will continue for many years. It is impossible at this stage to say how long you will remain dangerous. I do not consider that a determinate sentence or an extended sentence combined with an SOPO would eliminate or sufficiently reduce the risk, or sufficiently mark the exceptional gravity of this case. Second, I must impose a sentence for imprisonment for life if I consider that the seriousness of the offence or of the offence and one of the most offences associated with it is such as to justify the imposition of a sentence of imprisonment for life. S.225 brackets 2 brackets B CJA 2003. I have come to that conclusion without hesitation in both your cases. The 3 conspiracies to rape against separate victims, counts 3, 12 and 16, were exceptionally grave crimes. Count 10, shot over woods, was an offence involving extreme depravity. In any event, I have concluded your offending is particularly grave and your culpability is particularly high. It follows that, in my judgment, in any event, the seriousness is such that a life sentence would have a denunciatory value reflecting the public abhorrence of the crime. The sentences are Akhtar Dogar, counts 3, 12 and 16, and the conspiracies to rape, life imprisonment with a minimum sentence of 17 years. From this will be deducted the time you have already spent in custody, 460 days. I totally disagree with that, him doing that, but that is the judge's prerogative, obviously. Counts 10, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. That is also disgusting that they run concurrently. They should be back-to-back sentences. Counts 2, 7, 8, 14, 10 years imprisonment, concurrent. Again, that should be running in linear sentences, not concurrently. Count 6, 18, 19, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. And again, that 8 years should be added on at the end. You should start one sentence, finish it, then start your next sentence. Disgusting. Absolutely. It really, really does disgust me how our legal system does that. The totality of your offending is reflected in the minimum sentences that I have passed. You know, I'm going to go back to that. It's just legal obfuscation and jargon where they try and come out with these stupid word plays like you can be in 4 different prisons at once, serving 4 different sentences. It's stupid. You are serving 1 sentence at a time, and it really, this whole mind game that they play in the legal system of doing these concurrent sentences, it's just stupid, and it really, really is pathetic. It's weakness really in the system. And it's the cowardly nature of some people who make these rules up. The totality of your offending is reflected in the minimum sentences that I have passed to avoid any misunderstanding. And I don't blame the judge for that, by the way. The judge can only go off what they're told to do. So it's not the judge's fault necessarily. The judge most likely has to do them concurrently. So I don't blame the judge for that. To avoid any misunderstanding, let me make it clear that the minimum sentence of 17 years is the equivalent of determinate sentence of 34 years. Even after serving the minimum sentence, you will only be released if the parole board considers that it is safe to do so. Looking at the overall position as to your culpability and the seriousness of the offences, I see no reason to distinguish between Akhtar Dogar and his older brother, Anjum Dogar. The sentences are Anjum Dogar, counts 3, 12, 16, the conspiracies to rape, life imprisonment with a minimum sentence of 17 years. This minimum sentence reflects your overall criminality. It is the equivalent of a 34-year determinate imprisonment. The time you have spent already in custody will be deducted from that minimum sentence. It is only after you have served that minimum sentence that the parole board will be entitled to consider whether it is safe to release you. All of the sentences will be concurrent to the life sentences. Counts 2, 15, 10 years imprisonment, concurrent. Counts 10, 20 years imprisonment, concurrent. Counts 6, 18, 19, 8 years imprisonment, concurrent. Kamar Jamil, Miss O'Neill, QC, that's Queen's Counsel, on your behalf has submitted in respect to the offence that, point 1, you were more of a follower than a prime mover. Point 2, your involvement may have arisen particularly because you had access to vehicles. Point 3, according to CD, at least, your conduct did not become brutal. Point 4, you voluntarily desisted in September 2006. Point 5, in your cases, there were 2 victims as opposed to 3 victims in respect of the Dogars. As to your personal mitigation, she has invited me to take account of fact that, point 1, you've produced numerous positive references from family and friends. Point 2, you're a devoted husband and father of 3 children. It is clear to me that there was a significant change in your lifestyle in the years before your arrest for this matter, and you have been taking your family responsibilities very seriously. It's a shame he didn't consider the family of his victims, isn't it, really? Or her life. You know, it's all well and good talking about the... And again, if a member of my family, I found out we're doing that, I'd tell them to burn in hell. Now, this is a big problem in a lot of these cases, is the families support the abusers. It's disgusting. It is accepted that you were not mentally ill at the time of the offences. However, your mental condition has deteriorated. I have had the benefit of reading a psychological report prepared immediately before you gave evidence at your trial, and a recent psychiatric report prepared by Dr. Cumming at Belmarsh, which indicates that you have developed psychotic symptoms and there is evidence of a complex set of delusionary beliefs. Your illness will be managed within the custodial settings. The author of the pre-sentence of the report assesses you as possessing a high risk of serious harm to female children, aged 11 to 16. I accept that you do pose a significant risk of this at this stage. However, having considered all of the information about you, I am not in a position to say that you would necessarily pose such a significant risk if there was a sentencing package in your case of an extended sentence and an SOPO that has been drafted. I now come to consider whether in your case the case is of such exceptional gravity it must be marked by a life sentence. I accept that you were a follower rather than a leader. The leadership role was played by the Dogar brothers. I accept that your conduct was not marked with the same brutality. There were 2 victims rather than 3. There is no evidence of criminal conduct towards either girl after September 2006. Even taking all these matters into account, I consider your conduct was such as to warrant a life sentence. You willingly participated in the 2 conspiracies to rape. In respect of AB, the conspiracy involved AB being provided to large numbers of strangers for penetrative sex. These episodes lasted the best part of 2 years. You were fully participating in the group rape at Shotover designed to humiliate AB. It follows that in your case, the conspiracies to rape will attract life sentences. The minimum term will reflect your lesser role. The sentences are count 3 and 12. Life imprisonment with a minimum sentence of 12 years. All other sentences will be concurrent to the life imprisonment. The minimum term reflects the totality of your offending. It is the equivalent to a determinate term of 24 years. It is only after you have served that time with the parole board will you be entitled to release you if they believe it is safe to do so. Count 10, 16 years. Counts 2, 9, 11A, 11B, 10 years. Count 6 and 13, 8 years. Such time as you have spent in custody, 460 days, will be deducted from the minimum term. Mohammed Karar and Bassam Karar. You, Mohammed Karar, have been convicted of 2 very serious offences against EF. Conspiracy to rape her, which involved arranging for men to come and rape her, count 20, and trafficking her, count 21. EF had a particularly disrupted childhood, having been placed within various foster parents. You met her when she was under 13. You knew her true age. You groomed her so that you would have a hold over her. Wickedly, you turned against her mother. You got her hooked on drugs, providing cannabis and cocaine. You had a complete disregard for her own welfare and treated her as if she were a commodity. From the time when EF was 13, you started selling her to other men for sex. To use her words, this happened loads of times over the next few years. Sometimes you would take photos, presumably to entice further customers. Clearly, it was a commercial operation. You would actually ask customers whether they were satisfied. Again, with that, my own opinion would be that the photographs would have been for commercial enterprise purposes, but I get a feeling that he would have also got a kick out of humiliating her by taking the pictures, possibly could have used them to further blackmail her, and may have used them for his own personal gratification when away from the children. When she was 14 or 15, you started to instruct her to go to London. You'd make her meet men at Paddington Station and provide them with sex. This happened on 5 or 6 occasions. Even at the end of 2009, 2010, you were trying to lure EF to so-called parties where no doubt you wished her to provide sexual services to other men. When she refused, you threatened both EF and her mother. You terrified them. Over the phone, you threatened to kill them. EF was not ready then to expose what you had been doing to her over the years, but at least the police were contacted to prevent this frightening harassment. You, Bassam Karar, were not involved in the trafficking of EF, however, have been convicted of a violent rape of EP on a specific occasion at the Nanford House, count 22. On November 2006, when she was 14, you took her to Nanford House for sex. She agreed. There came a time she wanted to go. However, after taking cocaine, you would not let her go. She made it very clear she wanted to go home. Her mother would be worried. You insisted on further sex, knowing that she was no longer consenting. You subjected her to a prolonged assault involving sexual and physical violence, degrading and humiliation. In particular, you became very angry. You jumped on top of her, pulled her hair, and forced her head onto your penis. You penetrated her vagina twice and ejaculated. At one stage, she could not breathe because your hands were tight around her neck and she felt that she was being throttled. You told her you were going to kill her. You also pushed her into the shower and urinated upon her, no doubt because you wanted to punish her and humiliate her. Mohammed Karar, Bassam Karar. I now come to the dreadful offences committed as against GH. I believe, guys, at this point, I think the crimes start getting really, really depraved from this point on. So if you've been upset and are finding it stressful at this point, I think this may be a time where you may want to switch off the video. I do believe this is where it gets I know it's been bad already, but I think this is when it gets actually dark. You, Mohammed Karar, have been convicted of no less than 16 offences against GH. These include 9 counts when she was under 13, 6 counts when she was well under 16, and 1 count when she was 17 and 18. Under 13, count 23, rape of a child. Under 13, vaginal specimen. Count 24, using an instrument with intent to procure a miscarriage. Count 25, rape, anal specimen. Count 26, rape of a child under 13, vaginal rape by other men who came to the flat. Count 27, assault of a child under 13, insertion of a handle of a baseball bat. Count 30, rape of a child under 13, High Wycombe and other places, anal rape specimen count. Count 31, conspiracy to rape a child under 13, agreement with Bassam that GH be taken to various houses to be raped by various men. Count 32, arranging child prostitution with Bassam. Count 33, trafficking with Bassam, 11 to 15. 13 or over. Count 28, conspiracy to rape, spit roasting. Count 35, conspiracy to rape, agreement with Bassam that GH be taken to various houses and locations. Count 36, arranging child prostitution. 13, 14, 15 with Bassam. Count 37, rape, vaginal specimen. Count 38, rape, anal specimen. Count 40, supply controlled drug class A. Count 50, rape in 2011 when GH was 17 to 18. Bassam Karar, over and above the serious offences you committed against EF, you yourself, often acting with your older brother, committed numerous offences upon GH. 3 offences when she was under 13. Count 29, rape of a child under 13, specimen vaginal. Count 31, conspiracy to rape a child under 13 with Mohammed taken to locations for sex with other men. Count 38, arranging child prostitution with Mohammed. 2 offences where her age is unclear, and I must assume she was at count 33, trafficking with Mohammed, 11 to 15. Count 28, conspiracy to rape, spit roasting, age unclear. 3 offences when she was 13 or over. Count 35, conspiracy to rape when J 13, 14, 15 with Mohammed. Count 36, arranging child prostitution, 13, 14, 15. Count 39, rape with GH, 13, 14, 15, specimen count. 50, you, Mohammed Karar, were introduced to GH when she was only 11. It is clear from the video clip we have seen she was a small girl at the age of 12. You were in your 30s. You knew that both her parents had profound disabilities, and at a very early age, she shouldered a huge responsibility towards her parents. You would go to her home and smoke joints with her father, who no doubt would have had no idea what you were doing to his daughter, including having sex with her at his home. You only raped her when she was 11. After a period of months, when you groomed her, you were having regular oral, vaginal and anal sex with her. You duped her by telling her that you'd take her to Saudi Arabia and married her when she was 15. She became pregnant. Your reaction was to become angry with her and slap her. You took her to Reading so that an illegal abortion could be performed upon her at an underground so-called clinic. Clearly, this was highly dangerous to her health. As always, you had no regard to her welfare and the damage you were causing her. She became obsessed with you and you exploited her. There came a time before she was 13 that both you, Mohammed, and Bassam Karar started to bring strangers to have sex with her. You, Bassam, would organise the sessions. Mohammed was closely involved and would be at most of these sessions. These occasions happened many times. You would make her act as a hostess at sex parties, no doubt charging her for her services. If she did not want to have sex with the men, you both would get angry. She had to endure depraved sexual demands, including the acting out of a weird sex fantasies and the insertion of objects in her vagina. If she kicked out, she would be restrained. If she said that she did not have sex, she said Mo and Bassam would get mad at me. You, Mohammed, made videos of GH performing sex acts, no doubt with a view to selling her sexual services. You, Mohammed Karar, took her to various places to provide sex to others. A hotel in Bournemouth, a flat near a school in Oxford. She was taken to High Wycombe for sex on a regular basis. Both of you took her to High Wycombe for sex with others. Bassam took her 2 or 3 times with Mohammed. Sometimes there were 3 or 4 men at a session, sometimes as many as 9 or 10. GH thought that Bassam was taking lots of phone calls in relation to the Wycombe trips, where there would be sex acts and sexual fantasies acted upon. GH would hear both Mohammed and Bassam speaking to customers over the phone before going to the Nanford for sex. She was taken to Nanford House over 50 times. The charge would vary according to the sex acts you'd make her perform. Mainly Mohammed would take her, but Bassam took her more than a couple of times. Sometimes she would be taken to the Nanford 2 or 3 times a week. You, Mohammed Karar, performed her for gang anal rape by using a pump to extend her anal passage. You subjected her to a gang rape by 5 or 6 men, count 30. At one point, she had 4 men inside her. A red ball was placed in her mouth to keep her quiet. Not only were you both involved in the commercial sexual exploitation of GH, you also used her for your own self-gratification. You both raped her when she was under 13. She was very young. Although it is not clear whether she was under 13, you both raped her at the same time, oral and vaginal anal. It happened on more than one occasion, count 28. Mohammed Karar, on one occasion when GH was 12, after raping her, she threatened you with a lock knife. Your reaction was to pick up a baseball bat with a silver metal handle, strike her on the head with it, and then inserted the baseball bat inside her vagina. You treated her as if she was your commodity. You branded her with your initial near her anal passage, using a hot hairpin. If GH did not comply with your wishes, if you were not with other people, you would lose your temper with her. As part of the grooming, you would provide her with crack cocaine and you injected GH with heroin on numerous occasions. Count 40. When she was not prepared to participate anymore, you would issue terrible threats. Your activities took a heavy toll upon her, both physically and mentally. In late 2010-2011, she phoned you. You invited her to come to see you. You said, "We'll sort it and make it better." Once there, you had an argument, and to exert your power and punish her, you pulled her down your trousers and raped her. Mohammed Karar, I take into account that you have no previous convictions for sexual offences. However, these are very grave offences. You exhibited exceptional depravity, both for your own sexual gratification and for your own commercial operations. Many of your activities involve planning. The suffering of your 2 young vulnerable victims were extreme and over a long period. I consider on all the information before me, including the pre-sentence report, that you do and will continue to represent a high risk of causing serious harm to young girls by the commission of further specified offences. Your offences do fall into the category where only a life sentence can be justified. Sentence. Counts 20, 31, 35, life with a minimum term of 20 years imprisonment concurrent. That 20 years reflects the total criminality involved. It is the equivalent of a determinate sentence of 40 years. You will serve the minimum sentence less the time you have already spent in custody. It is only then that the parole board will be entitled to consider whether it is safe for you to be released. The sentence on the other counts will all be concurrent to the life sentences. Counts 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, 20 years. Counts 37, 38 and 50, 17 years. Counts 21, 24, 32, 33, 36 and 40, 10 years. Bassam Karar, you have no conviction for sexual offences and I take that into account. However, your offending involves 2 victims. Whilst you were not involved in the trafficking of EF, You carried out a brutal and violent rape upon her when she was only 14 and very vulnerable, and you sought to humiliate her. On its own, that would attract a sentence of 17 years imprisonment following the guidelines. You were also well involved in both organising the commercial exploitation of GH from when she was under 13, and you used her for your own sexual gratification by making her perform grotesque sex acts, such as exhibited in count 28. I have to consider whether you meet the dangerous criteria. I agree with the conclusion of the author of the pre-sentence report, and upon all the material before, principally the evidence at this long trial, you do pose a significant risk of harm to young girls from the commission of further offences. Furthermore, I am looking at your offending. I am unable to say how long that risk will continue. I cannot say that it will be sufficiently reduced by the imposition of an extended sentence combined with an SPO. In my view, counts 31 and 35 are offences of truly exceptional gravity, and your overall offending does fall into the category where only a life sentence can be justified. Bloody hell. Sorry about that, guys. Find that again, count 6.60. Good job of check that, isn't it? Sorry about that, guys. The sentences of the court are in counts 31, 35. Life sentences with a minimum term of 15 years. That is equivalent to a determinate sentence of 30 years. It means you will have to serve that minimum sentence less than the time you have spent in custody, 460 days. Only then will the parole board entitled to consider whether it is safe to release you. All the other sentences are concurrent with the life sentences. Count 22, 29, 39, 17 years. Counts 28, 32, 20 years. Counts 33, 36, 10 years. Assad Hussein, you've been convicted of 2 offences of sexual activity with a child under 16. There were 2 separate victims spanning a period of 6 to 7 years. Counts 4, sexual activity with a child, AB. Count 47, sexual activity with a child, IJ. You are now aged 32. I accept that you were not an organiser. You exploited young girls for your own sexual gratification. In my view, you have a predatory sexual interest in young girls, and your actions will show a callous disregard for the consequences of your actions. In respect to AB, during the period when she was becoming groomed and coerced into performing a series of violent and degraded sexual assaults at the hands of other men at pre-arranged events, you came to one of these events and took advantage of AB and had vaginal sex with her. There are the following aggravating features. The nature of circumstances that led to AB being available for sex with you cannot have escaped your notice. Although I accept that you had no hand in organising or arranging the event, you played no part in the corruption of AB, and there is no evidence that you paid for sex. In your case, there was no violence. However, there is clear inference from the evidence that you would have been aware that AB was being passed around between men for sex. Since this was a specimen count, I sentence you on the basis that you had sex with her on just that one occasion. Of course, I accept the jury's verdict that you may have responsibly believed she was consenting. Reasonably believed. Reasonably believed. I am quite satisfied that you attended the event in order to have sex with her, as well as, and well knew, point 1, she was under 16. Point 2, she was being groomed to provide sex with you and others. Point 3, she was being plied with alcohol and drugs to achieve that object. It follows that I regard this as an extremely serious example of this offence. You would have been at least 10 years older than her. Some years later, between July 2011 and December 2011, you took advantage of IJ, just 14 years old and approximately 16 years younger than you. It would have been very clear that IJ, whatever the position was in respect to her physical maturity, was emotionally very immature. She was out of control and easily manipulated when under the influence of alcohol and drugs. During that weekend when she was back on Oxford to see her mother before Christmas, you took advantage of her and had vaginal sexual intercourse with her. You may well know that she was under the age and heavily under the influence of alcohol and drugs. No doubt because of the drugs and alcohol, she had little or no recollection of the events of that weekend. No doubt you felt there was no chance that this would come to the notice of the authorities. The discovery of your DNA led to your apprehension. You appear unable to understand the exploitative nature of your relationship with IJ. I agree with the author of the pre-sentence report. You had sex with each of these young girls. Your action will have compounded the harmful and damaging impact sexual abuse has had on their lives. I take into account that you have no history of sexual offending. Although you are not a person of previous good character, your convictions are of a different nature and have little or no relevance in the context of this case. I have regard to your personal circumstances. In particular, you and your wife have lost 2 children because of congenital defect. That is most likely, people, going to be cousin marriages. Sarah West, the author of the pre-sentence report, has concluded that you do not pose a high risk of harm to females aged 12 to 16, presenting a medium risk likelihood of reoffending in this way. In the light of your roles in these offences, I am not able to say you represent a significant risk of serious harm to the public from the commission of specified offences. It follows that I conclude that the dangerous criteria are not met. Following the guidelines, the appropriate starting point of an offence of this nature under S9 of the Sexual Offenders Act 2003 is 4 years. As I have indicated that in respect to count 4, there are aggravating features, not least your knowledge of the exploitative context and the involvement of other men. The sentence of this court is 5 years imprisonment. In respect to count 47, this is a further serious offence since you took advantage of an immature young girl over 10 years younger than you who would have been under the influence of alcohol. I accept the sexual activity was consensual and there was no corruption. I take into account the principle of totality. The sentence is 2 years imprisonment to run consecutively to the sentence in respect of count 4. It follows that the total sentence is 1 to 7 years. You will serve half and be on licence for the remainder of your sentence. I impose an SOPO to the terms of the draft order. It will be for an indefinite period. Zarshan Ahmed, you have been convicted of 2 offences of sexual activity with a child under 16. Counts 45, a specimen count in respect of vaginal intercourse on a number of occasions with IJ when she was under 16. It is accepted that sex took place between 5 and 10 occasions. And count 49, vaginal intercourse with KL when she was aged 15. The jury has rejected your defence that you reasonably believe the girls were under 16 at the time. I have no doubt that she had and have a predatory sexual interest in young girls. You believe that somehow you had an entitlement to have your sexual needs met. You are now aged 28. At the time, you were over 10 years older than the girls you preyed upon. You first contacted IJ pretending to be someone else. You adopted various grooming strategies. You enticed her to your address. You would have been aware that she was emotionally mature and highly vulnerable to abuse. You were, at the very least, aware that your premises, IJ, would have had access to alcohol, cannabis and cocaine. You knew that this would have a disinhibiting effect upon her, which would facilitate your abuse of her. You had no regard whatsoever to the effect of your actions would have upon her. No doubt you thought that IJ would not go to the authorities because even if she did, she would not have been believed. Your DNA was found on her clothing, leading to your apprehension. During this period, you also took advantage of KL when she was under the influence of drink. You well knew her age as she had not told you when she was 14. You do not accept that there was any genuine friendship between you. You were manipulating the situation, grooming her for your own sexual self-gratification without any thought as to the effect upon her. I take into account, point 1, the fact that there came a time when you ceased contact with IJ. Point 2, you have no previous convictions for sexual offences. Point 3, you have mental health issues that may have suffered from clinical depression. The author of the pre-sentence report, Corrina Johnson, states that your attitudes towards substance misuse, sexual behaviour and gratification are all areas of concern. She is of the view that you present a high risk of serious harm to children, specifically females aged between the ages of 13 to 16, on the basis of the information before me, specifically the nature of your offending. I have no doubt that you do pose a significant risk in the future of serious harm to members of the public from the commission of specified offences. I need to consider whether there are interventions which could serve to reduce and or eliminate that risk. Corrina Johnson has assessed that in retrospect you do have an understanding of your sexual behaviour and you could respond positively to a sex offenders treatment programme. It follows that sentencing package with an SOPO can be imposed with appropriate prohibitions in order to reduce the risk you pose. It follows I do not consider it necessary to pass an extended sentence in your case. Nevertheless, there are serious matters. The starting point following the guidelines is 4 years imprisonment. In respect to counts 45, IJ, there are aggravating features. There were at least 5 occasions. This was not a genuine relationship. It was exploitative of a very immature young girl addicted to drink and drugs at a very young age. The sentence is 5 years imprisonment. As for counts 49 KL, I accept that she was 15 at the time and there was no violence. However, you knew her age. She had told you she was heavily under the influence of drink at the time. I cannot accede to your counsel's invitation to pass a concurrent sentence, but I take into account the principle of totality. The sentence of the court is 2 years imprisonment to run consecutively to count 44, making 7 years in all. You will serve half this sentence. You will be on licence for the remainder. I impose an SOPO for an indefinite period of time of the draft order that has been placed before me. In respect to all the defendants, there will be notification requirements for an indefinite period. The disclosure and bar in service applies in all cases, which will prevent you from ever working with children. I wish to pay tribute to all 6 complainants and the members of their families who had to go through the ordeal of giving evidence in this long and difficult trial.